All right, let's go. So, hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest Still COVIDing chat. Most of you here, I believe, know me, but for those of you who don't, my name is Kara. I'm Familia Hernandez Darling on Facebook. And it's been quite a while since we've done one of these presentations. So, I'm really excited to see everybody here today. A lot of familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while, and some new ones too. So, thank you all for joining us. This is one of our hot topics where we kind of go over a whole bunch of stuff that's going on in the world and going on and relevant to our community. And I do have a whole lot to cover today. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. Um, I will struggle to read the chat as I'm going. So what I'll do is I'll go over what I have to tell you guys, and then I'll start going through the chat afterwards and try to get some questions as time permits. I am recording this. There will be an edited version that goes up on YouTube that doesn't have some of the information that we just prefer not be out completely in the public sphere. But if you are a member of the forum, the unedited version of this video will also be posted on the forum, so you can revisit anything that we've said here today. So, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, which actually was working a second ago. And now, hopefully, you guys can see kind of our agenda of the things that I do want to talk about today. So, the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of give you some status and some updates about why it's been so long since I've done one of these and kind of where we are with our groups and all of those kind of things. Then I want to talk about some hopeful things because I think we can all use a little bit of hope right now. And so the promising directions for COVID developments. The new technologies and things that will make our lives hopefully easier, or the revised version of when is this pandemic going to be under control? I won't say end anymore. So that's what I want to cover there. And then I want to talk about, the Iran conflict and the current climate change issues and how those kind of, all converge on how we prepare and protect ourselves from COVID and from, supply chain issues and all those kind of things. Then I'm going to give some updates on Plus Life, and then I'm going to go through and do some questions after that. So you guys do know that I'm, not the most tech savvy person. So if we run into some issues, I appreciate your patience as you bear with me, but I'm just going to jump right in and get started. So you might have noticed that it's been quite a while since we've done one of our hot topics or even one of our informational sessions. And I'm going to own that largely. It's been a function of kind of some things that I've had going on in my own life. You guys probably know I have three medically complex kiddos, and two of them had exacerbations of their conditions, towards the end of last summer, beginning of last fall, at the same time that I had some other kind of work stressors and personal things, and then my modmin team also had a whole bunch of things that were happening, which kind of made it where our modmin team was struggling a little bit, and so everyone was just kind of in and out as they could. And the good news is that cumulatively in our little space of the still COVIDing universe, we have about 20,000 people now cumulatively among most of our groups, and that doesn't count the old survivor core group that we've kind of taken over and are trying to kind of shepherd. But we do have a substantial number of people that are still interested in COVIDing, and I thought maybe with it seems like in real life, you look around and everybody's trying to give up mask, or the COVIDing people who used to be COVIDing weren't, or whatever. And I thought our kind of group membership and engagement would drop off, but all of our groups have just still been growing and growing. And I don't know if that's because we're all really trying to find information in each other now, and it's not as easy as it used to be, or some other people maybe who weren't, interested in protection of are learning about, long COVID and some of the other things that we do, or if we're just kind of helping each other out word of mouth, but all of our groups, none of our groups have, really lost membership, and they've all continued just kind of either hang on steady or keep growing, which is great news. But it's also, a kind of a big modmin commitment, in addition to the fact, that we then also put up the forum so that everyone can have a little bit more of a private way to connect with each other. That's a little bit safer, that we can talk about some things that we wouldn't necessarily want to be out there in the public Facebook sphere. And that's been a whole technical learning curve. That's a whole nother set of people trying to keep that up and running. Some of you might have realized that it crashed last week or a week and a half ago. And that was my fault again. It was a technical setting on some things, and I ended up clawing it back up. So it's just been a little crazy in terms of management and the number of people at the same time, that there's been a whole bunch of kind of personal confluence of things, and everything in the COVID community. So I was actually sitting here for the past several weeks going, what does this really mean? Like, what does this mean for what we do here, and what does this mean for, me personally, kind of trying to keep pushing and spearheading and sharing information with everybody. There have been a few times where I've had kind of itchy finger trigger to just go, boop, see you later. And then there have been other times where I've been like, no, wow, we really do still get value out of what we're doing, and people still do still really care. And so I've just been on this kind of little bit of a roller coaster about who, who, how are we serving people? Who are we serving? Are we really, the whole reason why this, our little corner of the COVIDing verse started, why I spun, actually, there was the Are You Still COVIDing? And then there was the parents group that I first spun high risk off of, and then built from there, was because I really felt like that as I felt impotent in the face of the pandemic, and I can't make big decisions for government entities, or I don't have billions of dollars to try to affect systemic change. What could I do that would, bring value and make me feel less impotent in the face of this really big problem? And one of the things that I found that I could do is share information, connect people. And as I walked through these things myself for my family, I spend a fair amount of time, and still spend a fair amount of time, sifting through information, sorting through data, trying to figure out which way to go. And I thought, well, if I'm having to do that at my house, why not share it with you guys, so that you don't have to do the same stuff that I'm doing? So then we can all kind of share the load. And some people can look at some aspects, and other people can look at other aspects. And we all can have, we can all have kind of a information sharing, and a community. And, by and large, it's really has made my life a lot richer to have these groups, to also have kind of a record of, as the, pandemic has come along, and as we've morphed to looking into other polycrisis and other kinds of issues. This has, this has really made me not only meet a lot of friends and a lot of you guys along the way, relationships that I really value. Has also made me examine more closely the things I'm doing. And so I would say, overwhelmingly, it has been a positive experience for me. Um, but it's also been a whole lot of work. And I was sort of like on the edge of like, okay, is this kind of done? Is it kind of run its natural course? Do I just kind of stop, and go on to these other things that are demanding my attention, or not? And then some angel, and I honestly don't even know who it was, some angel jumped on my Kofi and made a really nice donation. And the message from that donation was, please just keep going, thank you for your service. And I don't know how they knew, besides the fact that I've been kind of MIA in the Zooms, and we've been kind of, just minimally pushing things along and trying to keep the peace. But they came in and said, basically, what you're doing is valuable. And I've had several messages over the past few weeks where people have reached out and said, hey, I just wanted you to know that what you do does make a difference. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to get my shizz together. And I'm going to really look at and see, like, can we have a little bit more of an organized effort? Can I go back to kind of regularly, contributing and creating the content and the information that I used to create. But at the same time, like, kind of what do I need back from that? How do I make this feasible where I don't feel like that, my kids are suffering because my attention is here, or I don't feel like it's a chore or something that, that is does not feel like kind of flowy for me to do. And so there's going to be some kind of structural changes in the way that I share some things. I really am dedicated to accessibility and community movement. And part of the reason too is when people reach out and say, "Can I help?" It takes me kind of time and effort to train people or teach them even how they can help with this kind of massive thing now that we have moving on. And so one of the things is I'm going to do is I'm going to be reaching out more into the community and saying, "Hey, can you guys help with this? Can you do this? Can you look into this? Can one person step up and say, 'Hey, I'm going to look at this aspect of something?'" And so we can make it more like a kind of community sourced endeavor, instead of me feeling like that I'm kind of pulling things and pushing things. And then that, there's a couple of people, of course, that are key. Everyone knows Christina kind of busts her butt as she can, pushing information around and writing and pulling things. But, there are definitely people who are coming in. It's not just me, but can we get more of that? Can we get more people that come in and care whether or not these spaces still exist and whether or not these communities exist? And then there's going to be another kind of change in that we put up the forum. We've had some information in the forum. We've just been kind of growing it slowly. And now there's going to be a distinct difference in, regular sharing of things in the forum versus putting everything out there on Meta and Facebook. And so we're going to really encourage people who want up to date information to get to the forum. The other thing that I am going to do is I'm going to share our Ko-fi. And it's posted up in the top of all of the groups. The only time we've ever really asked people to come in and try to do stuff with Ko-fi is when we were putting up the forum so that we could kind of pay the developer. But I am going to take the people who have been generous enough to say, "Hey, I'm going to do a $5 monthly subscription on Ko-fi," and I'm going to probably save things like these hot topic analysis where it takes me a while to kind of shift through and present these things for people who can help out that way. We do need some more help now. I mean, we've gotten to the point where, I'm paying for certain things out of my pocket that I really just can't keep footing. And it's not huge amounts because I don't have huge amounts, but it's enough that I feel like it should be crowdsourced at this point. We should be regularly supporting Bat in the who is our forum website developer in the way that I want to do that. And every time I take 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 hours to do stuff here, it shouldn't really take away from some of the other things and commitments that I have in life. And that's one way that people can help. And I mean, it doesn't matter if it's $2 or $5 or $10. And definitely if that's the difference between you eating or putting gas in your car, please eat and put gas in your car. And there will always be enough content and summaries for people, or just message us and say, "Hey, this is a real hardship, but I really want to follow your analysis. What can we do?" But I do think if you can do $2 or $5 or $10 a month to kind of help this going, then that is really going to take some of the stress off and allow me also to keep doing some of these things. And so that's kind of where we are. I wanted to share with you a few things that we do have coming up. And I haven't actually gotten the event stuff created yet because, again, creating these events and pushing them out, it's all kind of a time crunch. But April 10th, I'm going to do an updated "What's in My COVID Box 2026." That is a big question we still get. "Oh, I got COVID now for the first time," or "I got COVID for the first time after 4 years. What's changed? What's in the box? What do I need to do to keep my best odds for not developing long COVID and kind of keep myself healthy?" And so I'm going to pull out my COVIDing box and share it with you guys, 2026 edition. And then April 26th, we're going to have a dysautonomia discussion with Dr. Groisman again. He's going to come in and talk about POTS and that aspect of long COVID, and what are some of the up and coming things that we can do to basically control that heart rate variability. I have a CO2 monitor presentation that I've been working on that will come in on May 22nd. I actually have some air spots that I was going to show versus the Euclid airs versus my little temp tops versus the Aeronets and how I use them kind of on the day to day. And then we also are going to have AeroLamp has come out with a loaner program that's really pretty cool that I want to highlight for you guys, and talk about the AeroLamp and UVs. And then I'm pretty sure between April and May, we're definitely going to want to do another one of these hot topics, that will be, live for subscribers so that we can go over and keep following up on these analysis. I've been known in the past to hop on kind of impromptu of some of these things if there's something happening in the world that kind of affects us directly. But this is kind of the direction that I'm thinking of going, and some of the things that we have moving. And I may actually, put a couple posts up in the group too, and on the forum, that if there's some specific things that you guys want to hear or want me to do, then of course I'm happy to do that as well. Um, is there a way that maybe those who can pay more can contribute more so those who have less access can join? Yeah, we could definitely figure something out about that for that as well. So certainly want to keep it as accessible as possible for people, and at the same time kind of cover our costs. So that's about me getting my shows together and getting us all kind of back on track and scheduled in our regular community meetings and community topics, because I do think that there's a whole lot going on right now. And when I feel myself kind of bogged down in negativity and all of the things that are happening, it's just so much coming together and talking about ways to troubleshoot, things to problem solve, staying informed, being a little bit more empowered just helps me kind of feel a little bit more grounded with my feet on the ground. And it also helps me feel like less alone, that there are other people thinking about these things, working on these kinds of problems from, a similar time frame. So without further ado, let's move on to our first topic of tonight, which is promising directions for COVID developments. So back on July 4th, 2022, in high risk, and I believe this is also in forward motion, I made a post called "When Will the Pandemic End?" Because we kept getting, at this point, we were 2 years into the pandemic, and we kept getting questions about when is this going to be over? When is it going to stop? And I kind of, outlined there was a study that came out shortly before that basically showed that the pandemic was a fractal, that as long as there was no very decisive mitigation, that the variants would go on and on, the infections would go on and that there wasn't, an actual endpoint. And a lot of people didn't really want to hear that yet in 2022. I know that once I realized it, kind of earlier that year, it kind of smacked me on my butt. I had to take a couple of days off and go breathe because, it was kind of dawning that really this pandemic is not going to end. It is going to be a fractal and keep going on and on and on. And so all this time when we hear from people around, well, when are you going to take that mask off? Well, when are we going to go back to normal? Having being able to say, you know what, I think I'm just not going to share air now for a really long time. It can definitely be something that's really difficult to wrap our heads around. And so I wanted to come up with some endpoints. And the endpoints that I came up with at that time were improved air quality, including ventilation, filtration, and UV, universal masking in public spaces, hopefully better vaccines, better therapeutics, clear and truthful public messaging, and understanding of and therapeutics for long COVID. And I said, when all of that happens, that can actually break the fractal cycle and the pandemic will be over. And so I think it's worth visiting now, almost 4 years later, to kind of see where we are and maybe even revising our metrics a little bit, because it's pretty evident that we're not getting universal masking in public spaces. That's not happening. The improved air quality, well, we can kind of manage that in our homes most of the time, right? We can use our own filtration systems. We can work on our own ventilation. We can add our UVs. Some of us who have our own businesses can also do that, in our workspaces. But really, this is also not very publicly feasible as well. We are not, we are still not meaningfully close to having universal air quality standards. We do have some really great people working on it, but it's not just not practical that that's happening anytime soon. Better vaccines, well, maybe, or maybe our next really fabulous preventative is not going to be a vaccine. Maybe it's going to be something else, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second and share that with you. Are we going to have better therapeutics? Absolutely, we are, and we do have better therapeutics. We've gone from nothing, and things like molnupiravir or remdesivir and all of those other kind of things to things like Paxlovid that do make an actual considerable difference in mortality, and there are even better therapeutics on the horizon. So this is the one where I can say, yeah, we do have better therapeutics, not just for acute COVID, but we are getting them for long COVID. We are understanding more and more how long COVID affects the body and what are those things, sequelae that we deal with, and how can we address the sequelae. Are we there yet? Of course not. We're not there where we can definitively say, I can give you this prophylactic, and if you get COVID, it's not going to really affect you. I really hope one day we have something a little bit like the Zofluza for the flu strains now. I'll tell you, man, the Zofluza is really good. You take Zofluza, if you have flu, it's usually gone within a day or two. It's very mild, and if don't have flu, you can get prophylactic protection for up to 2 weeks. The first time I heard about Zofluza a couple years ago, it was with a few doctors that I work with in Japan, and it was like standard in Japan. That's what they used. They didn't use Tamiflu or anything else. And now, the Zofluza is over here. You can get it even if you don't have insurance. You can get it for $50, and it's a really, really great antiviral for flu prevention. I want something like that for COVID. I want it really, really bad. And there are some things again in the pipeline that are still being developed. I mean, we have this whole kind of, oh, COVID's just a flu mentality from part of our the upfront public facing part of public health and the government, but there also is a significant kind of backdoor cohort where, like, if you looked at the Davos stuff, that people in high places know that you do have to have some kind of viral control or protection, or you have some really drastic kind of side effects as a society. And so the public funding has kind of been really devastatingly cut for research for a lot of these things, but there are still privately funded efforts, and there are still people in high places that are looking for therapeutics and preventatives because probably mostly selfishly they don't want to be walking around with long COVID. And the more and more data that comes out with long COVID, 20 or 30% of people who have even mild COVID infections are going to be affected in some way by COVID sequelae. And so um, I do think that we will have eventually an effective preventative mechanism, and I do think that we will eventually have effective prevention or treatment of long COVID. And once we have those things, then I think COVID will still be with us, and will still be here and mutating, but we can then kind of move around freely as we kind of did before 2020, with a better understanding of what kind of infectious risk we were taking even then. I don't know about you guys, but there's some things that I used to do then that now I'm just like, can't really believe we did that. But as we move forward, I am hopeful that we're going to have better preventative mechanisms and better treatment. And really, right now, the main danger for the majority of people right now is not catching COVID and actually dying from it. Of course, there are still a significant number of deaths that usually aren't attributed actually to COVID, but are kind of COVID immune after effects or COVID inflammatory things. But the majority of the risk at this point is from long COVID, how debilitating long COVID is, how deadly long COVID is, how long COVID will leave you without any kind of quality of life. And so I think these kind of endpoints are really important. So with that in mind, I started my search. And the first thing I wanted to do was compare the newer kinds of initiatives to vaccine efficacy that we have and to mask wearing, because that's kind of the other metric, is when can we take our mask off, if we can ever take our mask off. And I was actually really surprised because it had been several months since I had done kind of a deep dive into vaccine efficacy, simply because I don't rely on it. And some of my family members can't even partake of it. And so we have to kind of walk around like we're not, I mean, we're kind of partially protected by vaccination at my house. And we have to kind of walk around like we're not, because the least protected family member who's not vaccinated is kind of where you have to set your standard to care about the people in your house. And so, or at least I think you should. And so, I was actually pretty surprised when I looked and saw that all three vaccines, and I'm talking about, Nova and Moderna and Pfizer, that used to show, a pretty high efficacy in the beginning against the ancestral strains, have all drastically dropped in their efficacy against current variants. And even like within the past year, their efficacy has gone way down. And even my dearly beloved Novavax seems to have lost efficacy. And the reason why it seems to have lost efficacy is not because the vaccines don't work. It's because we're not updating them fast enough and allowing people access to them frequently enough to actually keep up with the mutations and the strains. The getting the vaccine once a year with one updated formula is pretty obviously, when we look at the data now, not keeping up, and it's dropping, symptomatic efficacy from a much higher level down to 30 or 40%. And that's really, really disappointing. And that's not likely to change, especially with the anti-vaccination climate of the current administration. It is highly, highly unlikely that we are going to get better vaccines more than once a year, updates, and more than once a year accessibility. Now, we still are getting the severe disease protection. They still are keeping people out of the hospital and from dying, and we don't have an immune naive population anymore. So most people in our population, with a few of us that are kind of, by both luck and privilege holdouts, haven't had COVID yet, but most people in our society now have had COVID. So we don't have an immune naive population. And that is also contributing to, the lack of severity of the acute infection. But it just doesn't seem to be really dropping in our numbers of long COVID at all, which, like I said, tends to be the bigger threat. And so, the other problem that we're having right now is we have less data to know what's actually happening. We're running, obviously, we don't have funding, so we're running a lot less trials. We have this anti-vaccination kind of pervasive attitude among, our public health authorities now. And so, it's also hard to know exactly what's happening. But the waning is fast. It's pretty real. Um, it looks like, if you come here from these sources and you watch Nova, we're going from 94 all the way down into the 30s and the 40s. And this is actually a pooled efficacy here. We can't even pick out from the 24 or 25 data, specifically Nova or Pfizer or Moderna, because they just kind of threw them all in together. And there was actually a very, very small percentage of Novavax in that trial. And so the numbers just, they don't look great, at least not for me and my family. Like something that even, gave us 50% protection would not be really meaningfully enough for us to kind of go about our lives and do our things. And so looking at the vaccination data, this was actually kind of really disappointing. And then the same thing here, you can see with Pfizer, we're already, down in the 30s against hospitalization even, and death. So these numbers kind of dropped my jaw when I started pulling them and putting them together. And then the same thing here with Moderna. You can see that kind of same curve going on here. So, of course, I'm not saying don't get your vaccination. I do believe that it's definitely something that, depending on your medical profile, can add to the layers of, again, ability to stay out of the hospital or die from COVID. But it is just not something that's going to be meaningfully sterilizing or protective for any period of time in the future. So, what is the good news, Kara? What can we look forward to? Well, one of the most promising things that I am looking at right now is that it's a new monoclonal. And it actually comes really close to. So I was looking for things in my search criteria that would kind of equal a fit tested mask. And the criteria that gets pulled for a fit tested mask, this is a global, not a personal risk reduction. A lot of us use mask a lot better than this. But globally, fit tested N95 gives about an 83% reduction in infection odds, the way that everybody uses them, not the way you specifically use them or I specifically use them. And so could we get at least that? Could we get at least 83% protection from something that isn't a mask? This in vivid formula that they're coming out, the VYD 2311, it is actually one of the few things that looks like it might be out in the next couple of years and might give us close to that level of protection. The phase 1 and 2 data supported 70 to 90% protection against symptomatic COVID. So the upper bound of that, if they actually show in phase 3, they're getting closer to 90%. That's really exciting. The con is we have a real problem with access to the monoclonals. They're kind of designed for people who can't be vaccinated, although they are marketing this as a vaccine alternative, and they're actually being kind of smart about it. They're going, oh, people want an alternative to vaccination, which is playing into like the Trump's administration's, hesitancy with vaccines, and saying we have a different thing that might work, just as well and avoid some of those vaccine risks. And so while I don't love pandering necessarily to people's fear about vaccination, they are kind of being smart and leveraging the current political stance to get some of their stuff done. This will be really great if we can access it, if they do actually put it out there. Right now, it's like kind of slated for immunocompromised people, but there are some murmurings and kind of hints that it might be available for a wider audience as a vaccine alternative. And so I'm actually a little bit excited about this one. The caveats are that the 70 to 90% figure is modeled. It's not necessarily observed yet. It's based on a prior monoclonal. And so there's a phase 3 trial happening right now, and the data is supposed to come out in mid 2026. And we'll know for sure kind of where it falls. If it does fall in the 70 to 90% protection, which would be actually significantly better than those vaccine numbers, if you remember. Now that the vaccine efficacy has waived, 70 to 90% would be much better against symptomatic infection. We also have to see how it kind of, performs in real world settings. We have to know how it performs against asymptomatic infections. And then we have to see kind of where in this range it falls. Does it kind of fall at the higher end, which would kind of be like a mask off criteria? Or does it fall like in the lower end, which would say, no, we still don't have really good protection about this. But this is on my watch list, and I have been following this for quite some time to try to see how it develops. The next thing on my list is the new improved Paxlovid. It's, and I don't even know how to say it, Ibuzatrelvir. But it is basically as good as Paxlovid without the medication interactions and side effects that Pax has. So it's not necessarily better, and through the kind of biochemical makeup of the uh, um, of the drug, they don't really think it's going to protect against long COVID, just like Paxlovid does not really protect against long COVID. But that the fact that it will be as good as a preventative without the weird taste, without all the people who can't use it because of their meds, and they're pushing for more accessibility to this. That makes this pretty exciting to me, because I do think we need both. We need preventatives and we need treatment arms to get out of us now, because we're just not getting the ventilation, filtration, and universal masking that would stop it otherwise. And so I am excited they are still working on antivirals. I am excited that they've got this really good one in the pipeline. Um, And so probably doesn't work against long COVID, probably could help prevent long COVID if it achieves better viral suppression. And it is already in phase 3. And that data is coming out between the end of this year and the beginning of next year. So this is coming to market relatively soon. And hopefully we will be able to access it then. My guess is it's about to bump the packs off, and this will be the new antiviral. Now, this is my favorite one, the ACE2 decoy receptor molecules. I really, really wish this would like go. It works on any variant. It has better efficacy than vaccines and could be a mask off contender. But the reason why I say that the monoclonal, the Invivid monoclonal, is really kind of what we have in the immediate pipeline is that this was already in preclinical regulatory studies in 2022, and it really hasn't moved since then because of a lack of funding. And so remember when I said our community can like come together and help with some things? I know that there have been people who have kind of murmured to me, oh, well, maybe I could help, fund PAX, not Plus Life approval in the US, or, oh, maybe we could get X, Y, or Z funding together. If we have any, venture capitalists or people who are, interested in, the financial side of things, this would be a really great thing to kind of come together as a community to get behind and fund, because this would actually be something that would be significant. I see. I don't know how to increase. I can't make the zoom. Oh, there we go. I make it a little bigger. Um, this potentially would exceed the monoclonal. It would apply to all variants. It wouldn't require updates because basically it's stopping the virus from binding to the ACE receptor. It's actually a sugar variant molecule that like sneaks into the ACE receptor ahead of the virus, and actually can even like break off the spike protein somehow when it tries to attach. And so this one mechanistically is a really great candidate. It does have a very small half-life. It only lasts about 4.5 hours. So they're trying to work on that in terms of delivery. And there's only one company right now. There were 3 or 4 companies, and they kind of dropped off. But there's one company that's still working on this, that still has it in process, but they need funding. And so this is something I would like to see us embrace as a community. And let's see if we can overcome the funding stagnation, because this would be really great. This would be something that could possibly make us kind of go back to more normal if we had this kind of drug that we could use and have infectious prevention. And so kind of as a summary here, for the Invivid, we're looking at 2026, 2027. That's the first one we talked about. There are some other monoclonals on the pipeline, and that might come out a little bit later. None of them are as great as this one, though, so far. And then we have the new and improved Paxlovid that hopefully will be out towards the end of this year, beginning of next year. There are some other kind of mouse data PL Pro inhibitors that I wasn't as excited about, but they are kind of in the pipeline. The intranasal vaccines are something that you hear a lot about, and I think the intranasal vaccines are actually, perhaps a little bit behind even the ACE2 decoy molecules in terms of what they're actually going to do for us. And so I'm not really super excited about a 67% reduction in symptomatic infection. I really want to push that higher. So that's why I'm not like all yuppie about the like woohoo intranasal vaccines. I want there to be this ACE2 decoy molecule. Of course, nobody really, I don't really get to say that, but that's just my take on it. And then I was actually interested to find that there's a heparin nasal spray investigational that inhibited nasal infection for up to 16 hours in a study. And so this one is still kind of really more new and in the pipeline. But I mean, heparin's pretty common. We have that a lot. We use it for a lot of different things. And so this might be something that kind of comes down the pipeline. But I just want the biggest takeaway too for you to be that there is still stuff in development movement. They haven't thrown it all out in the water. We're not just sitting here stagnating with nothing going on. There are things happening, and there are some cool things happening, hopefully within the next, couple of years, hopefully, depending on what happens with the Iran conflict and how that like throws a wrench into everything. But hopefully we'll still be pushing forward on some of these things. Science is not dead. It's just kind of hidden right now. But it is still here. So that brings us to the Iran conflict. And I'm putting this together with the current climate change issues because I think as people in our community, this is something that's really, really important for us to be tracking, and for us to, in the near future, that's going to be affecting us. So I wanted to start out by pointing out that, March has been really, really warm. It's also been a little bit crazy, especially for those of us over here in the Northeast. We're going up and down, and then the Southwest is kind of boiling. And then we've had some significant fires at other places already. And I don't know. Someone told me the other day that the weather's like pulling the Powerball. Like today it's 34, and tomorrow it's 67, and then it's 55, and that's kind of what we're seeing. But we're seeing a lot of changes in kind of the jet stream and the polar air masses and all of that kind of stuff are doing some pretty crazy things as climate change progresses and pushes forward, and it's kind of projected now that if we get the significant El Nino that they think we're going to get, we'll be living in the two C models, and those models are kind of pretty chaotic. So, well, the way that this affects us and what it has to do with us is, as we are looking at, COVID and disease prevention, the heat is going to do things that make us, migrate, that affect our preparation, and that, basically make a big difference to us in our day to day, even possibly within the next 3 to 4 months. And so I just want to kind of bring a little bit of this to everybody's attention, that this juxtaposed with the Iran conflict and the supply chain issues that we're going to have, makes some significant hurdles, not only for kind of how we daily live, but also for food production, which I'm sure everybody's aware of. That we're definitely looking into like the fourth quarter of this year being a really difficult time for food and actually eating. So I do want to put a plug in here for American Resiliency. I mean, I don't know her or get anything for plugging her, but I really love watching this channel and her updates, because she really does pull together a lot of data, and model a lot of things that make a difference, in when you look kind of both long range and short term, the things that are going to be affecting us. And so if you haven't had a chance to have a look at this YouTube channel or some of her stuff, she does a really good job. But she just released something a couple of days ago, I think, called The Everything, and it was kind of talking about the poly crisis. And what I wanted to kind of pull from that for you is that, this is from March 19th, but this keeps going. There is a significant portion of the United States in a drought. You can see here, where it's worse in some areas and better in other areas, but there's not a whole lot of white on this map. And so water, it is an ever pressing issue more and more every year. But the biggest, immediate thing besides the water in the US is the wildfires. And this is kind of the wildfire prediction map, based on these kind of drought numbers. And we're looking at a really significant risk in places that didn't used to have really, that are not wildfire savvy, that are not used to dealing with wildfire issues. And one of the big ones is right here, this corridor around Arkansas and Oklahoma and Missouri and down here a little bit into Texas, and then another one is over here in the southeast corner of the U.S. There's going to be significantly more wildfire activity that people are used to, and so people actually California is looking better in the drought stage for this year, but people over here in these areas are kind of, they know they can look at this map and say, okay, well, yeah, look here in Colorado, we're really, really dry and we've got to really be careful about fires and we've got these systems in place and these warning things. And, people are kind of packed and ready to go. Whereas we have these drier spots down here that aren't necessarily used to wildfires. And so, Emily points out in these videos how it's kind of even worse, especially given our state of FEMA and our national response, to have places that are kind of more naive to a specific type of natural disaster, like we saw in North Carolina and Helene. I mean, they were not used to dealing with hurricanes and hurricane flooding. This is the kind of stuff that climate change and climate resilience is bringing to our front doors, no matter where we live, are weather patterns that we're not used to. And so, as we prepare and look at what we need to do, this summer is going to be a little bit tricky for a lot of people in terms of drought. In terms of, even if you're trying to plant crops or whatever it is that that you're trying to do, and in terms of wildfires and preparedness for that kind of readiness. And we all know that as COVID cautious people, that lends a whole extra layer of what we have to do, because if we're going to have to evacuate, where are we going that's COVID safe? And if we have to go into a shelter, how are we going to also stop, the chain of infection that the kind of crowding in these kind of situations happens? What are our plans in these kinds of situations? And so that's why I really think that as a community we need to be thinking about these things, preparing for these things, and crowdsourcing around these things, because I would much rather know where one of you guys live, and if I have to ditch my house temporarily because there's a wildfire danger or there's smoke or whatever, and I know that my online friend lives 3 hours from me, and they're COVID cautious, I'm COVID cautious, we can arrange for testing, we can agree to mask, we can do whatever it is that makes each other comfortable. But that's a lot better scenario than us ending up in a shelter, or ending up in a situation where we're more exposed. And so definitely I think this is something that we can work on as a community, but something we have to keep in mind is that we need to be preparing. We need to be preparing for substantially warmer conditions. We need to be preparing for that to strain the grid. And so if we have, everybody's running their air conditioners at the same time, and then that overloads the electrical grid, and then the grid goes down for a while, how are you staying cool? And if you can't stay cool, what are your options? Where can you go? Those are the kind of things that we need to be thinking about. Personally, like, I actually happen to have a basement, and my basement stays about 55 degrees, and it doesn't matter if it's hot outside or cold outside, it just kind of hangs out at that temperature. And so, can you come to my basement and we set up some kind of, COVID safe way where we hang out together and we don't roast? Those are the kind of things I think that that we need to be thinking about when we're thinking about these kind of climate issues, juxtaposed with the supply chain issues that we're about to experience. This is just another map, again, that she brought up, that shows the black is good, actually, in this map, which kind of throws me a little bit. But this is the increase in the number of days over 105, and this is the increase in the number of days over 95, projected at 2C, which is probably what we're going to be seeing this summer. And so you can see here that corridor, which is also where that big wildfire risk is, and a lot of people are not necessarily really used to dealing with that there. And you can also, kind of tell that it's everything overall is getting a little bit warmer. And then this is just kind of for kicks. AMOC really, that's the current that kind of stabilizes weather patterns, especially in Europe. But I didn't know about this. AMOCscenarios.org. You can actually go through and see if the AMOC's on or if the AMOC's off, how that affects certain scenarios. Really, as I've looked at this, it seems like the AMOC being on in the face of a 2C rise is not, I mean, being off in the face of a 2C rise is not a horrible thing, at least for us over here in North America. Now, Europe may have a different opinion because it may get really, really cold there. But the AMOC kind of helps offset a few degrees. So, looking at this amocscenarios.org, I was thankful that she kind of showed that to me as well. So, I just wanted to say that we need to keep in mind as we're talking about, I always like to leave you guys with what do I do next, right? I don't like to just come in here and tell you about all these problems and then not leave you with, okay, what do I do next? I'm kind of setting the stage for the things that I'm doing right now, and the things that I hope that I can kind of encourage you to talk about and do. So, this is kind of some background information. Then I went ahead and I decided to model if gas keeps increasing, and this is in my area. Of course, gas prices is going to vary from different area and different areas. And I luckily have a lower gas price than people say in California have. But in general, if there's no escalation of the conflict in Iran, but the conflict kind of stays at this baseline, by June 17th, I will be paying $6.31 a gallon of gas. If the infrastructure hits happen and we get into an escalation mode, which actually today, the United States and Israel hit a water facility in Iran. So it looks like we are going to trade infrastructure hits like idiots. Then at a moderate escalation by June 17th, I'm going to be paying $8.10 a gallon of gasoline. And then if we really go at it, we're going to be paying $11.20. And I don't have to tell you that this increase in gas prices just by June, that's not that far away, is going to affect everything. It's going to affect the price of everything because we are a just-in-time economy that ships things. And so that shipping cost gets built in to everything. We're already seeing increases in airline tickets and jet fuel. We're already seeing increases in, our electric bill is probably going to start hitting within 2 cycles. There's lots of things that this is going to affect. And so having this kind of modeling kind of helps me wrap my head around where are we going and what is kind of next. This is at the baseline was 21 cents a week from the time that the conflict started back in April, and I modeled this out on the 25th. And so basically it cost me $50 to fill up my tank right now, without anything happening that's extraordinary. It's going to be $83 by June. If there's a moderate escalation, it's going to be 107. And then if there's a severe escalation, my fillup's going to cost $148. And so you can tell that we are going to be in basically a world of hurt. But this is not they don't talk about this stuff on the news. They don't put this up there. And I'm like, we're sitting here talking about a whole bunch of other kinds of fluffy things that maybe I don't even need to hear about, people. I need to know if in June I'm going to be paying, $8 a gallon for gas. Can somebody please tell me so that I can figure out, can I carpool? Can I go sleep at my office? Like, what can I do to help offset these costs and also help my neighbors who I know may not even be able to weather it as well as maybe I could weather it? And so, what can I do to kind of do this? So I think that to me, being informed is an issue. And so as we looked at the top 10 near impacts for my area, and again, this may vary slightly, we're talking about the fuel prices accelerating. The grocery inflation is now structurally locked. And so, I've been modeling different scenarios where, there's probabilities, there's things that we monitor, there's things that are probable, and then there's things that are kind of locked in and going to happen, like they're already happening in real time. And so we already we know we're going to expect a 15 to 25% grocery increase by summer. You can just build that in. So if you're spending $200 a week on groceries right now, you're going to expect to increase that by a quarter. For every $100 you need to expect to pay 125. And this isn't going to go away quickly. Even if the conflict stopped tomorrow, this is still going to happen. And this is going to be locked in through 2027 for a variety of a cascade of reasons that we can talk about in a little bit. Household medication supply risk has escalated. We've been talking about for a really long time, hey, lay in supplies of your medications as you can. But right now, the Iran war is compounding things like the Adderall shortage that was already happening, and this is actually also going to affect your over-the-counter medications like ibuprofen, and I don't know, your Tums, whatever it is that you're using. All of these things, a lot of them are sourced out of India. A lot of these things do have some petroleum components in them or in their packaging. Anything that is built from plastic, six of the seven naphtha plants, which is a chemical precursor that is used in all plastic production, have already declared force majeure in their contracts. And that means they've declared that there is a force bigger than them, the war, that will not let them fulfill their supply contracts that they've signed, and they have either shut down or stopped. Shut down or greatly reduced production of things. So the impacts, and I think I have a timeline here in a second, the impacts to us, because we are on the other side of the world, are slightly delayed. You can see right now, like I saw stuff coming across today about South Korea and Japan, like they're really taking big hits right now. And over, and in Asia, they're going to feel it first. But of course, the people actually in the conflict feel it first, and then the people over in Asia will feel it, and then it's going to come to us. And so we need to start thinking and being ready, and taking like this little by little. We don't want to wait until it knocks us on our ass to do something about it. We want to have a little bit of time, which we do still have a little bit of time for certain things to kind of, take our baby steps, manageable bite-sized chunks of how we deal with these things. So, um, electricity and utility bills are going to be increasing within 1 to 2 billing cycles for electricity and gas heat, another 10 to 20% there. So you can already see your actual gas cost will increase, your grocery cost is going to increase, your electricity bill cost is going to increase. And then right now already, the helium shortage coming out of the Middle East is affecting helium rationing in the U.S., and that is particularly impactful for things like MRIs. If you have an MRI that it needs to happen, it needs to be scheduled immediately, and should be completed within the next 2 to 3 weeks, because I think we got a message from our area hospital that they already know that they were getting cut at least 25% of their helium allocation that allows their MRIs to run, and that they were told to be prepared for up to a 40 to 50% cut in the helium allocation, like in the next quarter. So this is just, as the longer the conflict goes on, the worse it's going to get. Helium's a big deal because it's not, something that you can just make out of anything. It's a noble gas, and there's a limited amount of it, and the helium shortage is going to hit us here in medical equipment, and then it's also going to hit us in semiconductor development eventually. So this is happening right now as we speak. And we're, not talking about it. We're talking about lots of other things that might make us feel a little bit better about ourselves, or might distract us from these things. But these are things that within the next, couple of months are coming to your front door. And so we should all be prepared and ready to start dealing with these things. And then, of course, the Houthi now have entered the scenario. And so, since we have the Strait of Hormuz closed on one side, now that they're there, we could actually have the bypass route on the other side closed, and that's going to confound everything. And so that's the new variable that we need to look at, is that right now we're experiencing, the blockage of the shipping and the oil and the tankers on one side of the peninsula. The other side of the peninsula, if that closes, then that's going to make all of this stuff even worse. We also just, our recession probability in the US just crossed critical thresholds. Right now, there's somewhere between a 30 and a 60% chance that we will enter a recession, even if the even if the conflict stopped today. So just as we plan and as we know what's coming, that will influence our financial decisions and whether or not we decide to grab that debt or make that big purchase or kind of, tighten our belts and kind of hang out where we are because of that recession probability. Now, for me, this is about the scariest thing. The naphtha dependent medical supply chain. So this is again that naphtha is the precursor to plastic. And so as of March 27th, South Korea had only 2 weeks of naphtha supply left. There are other Asian producers and crackers that are curtailing production. This actually directly affects our access to anything plastic, but that includes IV bags, syringes. Think about, I don't know if you guys were aware, but after Helene, when the Baxter plant shut down, there was saline shortages. The saline shortage before that was due to the bags that saline came in went from a hurricane in Houston. By the time they tell us about this publicly, we're already 2 weeks into the shortage. That this doesn't come pre-shortage, and so that's why I thought it was worth telling you guys today. We are already seeing this is going to happen. We are going to have critical shortages in medical supply. At the same time, we've already had cyber attacks. You probably were following the Striker hack that took several of the remote medical equipment offline. So, like EMTs couldn't work because some of their remote monitoring stuff was off. Surgeries had to be canceled. There was a lot of stuff happening in the past couple of weeks because Iran actually hacked. It was a Microsoft platform that interfaced with a lot of medical equipment. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday or the day before, which I kind of snickered. It's not really that funny, but Kash Patel's personal email got hacked by Iran, and they had all these like embarrassing pictures and quotes of him up there. But the cyber attacks also are not really funny. They are actually real. And so we're going to have supply chain issues at the same time that we have external pressures like cyber attacks crippling our medical system. And of course, because that's my day job, that's what I spend a lot of time also worrying about. And also because I have medically complex kiddos that rely on some of these things. And so this calculates and plays into what we should be doing to prepare today. Consumer electronics, of course, hardware, tablets, diagnostic equipment, if you need to replace your cell phone, all of that kind of stuff. Semiconductor production relies on helium and also has aluminum components. And aluminum right now is also, critically impaired and going to be an issue. So we have plastic, we have aluminum, and we have helium. And because we're globalized, all three of those things are going to be a big deal. Way bigger even than the oil and the natural gas. The United States, it's going to get more expensive, but the United States does have oil reserves, does have natural gas reserves, but so much of our aluminum and bauxite production and all of that comes from the Middle East, and the helium we can't compete with, and the plastics and the production of plastics. We don't have plants like that. They're already seeing nitrile glove shortages in Europe. The cost has increased by about 40 to 50%, and in some places they can't get them. And in the U.S., there was like a plant that was designed to flip to latex, but it's still sitting there, hasn't been used, and it has also like I say, the 60 or 70 million more dollars that's needed to actually outfit it so it can make medical gloves. And so we thought we were going to do some of these things to be less dependent in global infrastructure after 2020, but then we sort of halfway did them and then got involved in all of our own little, kind of political bullshit and never actually completed them. And that's going to come back and bite us in the ass right now. So anything electrical, technical, that kind of stuff is going to be hit. And particularly, this is going to be a problem again, like I said, with the medical community. And then, of course, we have financial market volatility, which we've already seen. We already know that inflation's going up, and that's tying into recession, which is tying into that. So great. This is all really cheery news, but it's all stuff we need to know. It's all stuff we don't need to be walking around with our head, in the sand or just not aware of, and then all of a sudden it hits us. We want to actually know these things. So, this was kind of the personal when I was running scenarios. The recommendation was this weekend to fill all household prescriptions at the maximum amount malleable quantities, to schedule the MRIs because the helium force majeure is now active in the US. Compressing all of my prior analysis. I've been running these analysis scenarios now for several weeks. And I kind of compare them. Like when I run one week, I compare them to what the projections were for the week before, and then I adjust to see were we on track, or is it happening faster, or is it taking longer, so that I can kind of monitor and adjust with what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm a little bit crazy. uh the grocery stores, so the big deal in the grocery stores is also the fertilizer window. Basically any nitrogen based fertilizer is kind of stuck now. And this comes at a time when I believe last week they said that a quarter of the farmers in the United States had not even sourced their fertilizer yet, and all of a sudden now we have a critical nitrogen based fertilizer shortage. There are other kinds of, could I pause on each one of these pages so we could read them? Kyle, I will let you see. I will make this document available so that everyone can go through and actually have some time to sit with it. I've just got so much to cover tonight that if I leave it on here any longer, I won't get to all the things that I want to tell you because I'm cramming it in because I don't want to keep you up way past your bedtime. So I will definitely make sure that everyone has a chance to kind of look at this document a lot more thoroughly. Um, but I'm going to kind of fly through the overview because I also want to take some of your questions because I know that, like, again, some of the stuff you may have already known, you may be following. Other this stuff may be new to you because you may not be quite as neurotic as I am about like digging into these kind of nuances, which, is what people in my life tell me, Carol, we don't have to do that because we have you to do it for us. And so I'm happy to be of that service. Anyway, so back to what I was saying, grocery stuff, prioritize proteins, cooking oils, flours, rice, grains. Those are all things that are going to go up because we have a fertilizer shortage. There are a couple of other types of fertilizer, like the potash fertilizer and stuff, but that's not like US modern agriculture's mainstay. And so this for us is going to mean increased food prices. And in other parts of the world, it's going to really mean famine. And so projections are by fourth quarter, it's going to be a global crunch. There's going to be a lot of global famine, and there's going to be a lot of increased food prices. There's going to be a lot of hungry people. So now is the time. Now is the time before these big things hit, to kind of just lay a little more by and lay a little more by so you can use it. You can help your neighbor. You can start building the kind of community resilience that we're all going to need to be able to get through this. Because I'm telling you guys, we're not doing this by ourselves. We are not a world unto our own. Our society is not made like that. We all depend on each other. And if we don't start learning how to collaborate and work together, then we're all going to be in a real world of hurt. But yes, proteins, cooking oils, flours, rice, and grains are big things. Anything that also comes into the country. So you're thinking of things like coconut oil, chocolate, coffee, all of those things are going to be issues. Any kinds of technology or hardware purchases need to happen. We're watching the gas prices. Um, I'm trying to grow potatoes. Anything that you can grow at your house. I have my little hydroponics pumping out lettuce, and I'm trying to grow some potatoes. And I told my kid she could have meet rabbits as her 4-H project because I'm like, anything that you can grow, any part of your own food that you can make. I was thinking the other day about mushrooms because mushrooms can't be that hard to grow, right? Anything that we can do and pick up on our own is, it's time now to kind of, get that going. And let's see, I mean, we all talk about the victory gardens after, during World War II, but most of us are not out there. Half of us don't even have yards to get out there and pull that plow. But we can do little hydroponic things. We can do little indoor things. There's all sorts of things that we can do to try to at least make some part of our food for ourselves, and then also trade with our neighbors. Find your local CSAs, find your local farmers markets, find your community gardens. All of those kind of things are going to be super important as we move now from this huge globalization to global crisis, and then that's going to bring us back more locally. It's going to come back to our networks of people that we know, and our ability to help each other and bring things more locally, which is really hard for us as coviders, because as coviders we are isolated. We are self-isolated, and for survival's sake we're going to have to learn how to interface with others, whether it's other coviders in our area that we haven't found, or other people that aren't coviding in a safe way, to be able to fill some of these gaps that are happening. Okay. So, and this, I found this really interesting as I was looking through things. And I used to kind of like almost every day, like watch the news and try to catch up and try to like figure out what was going on. Until I read that if you monitor things by trigger thresholds instead of daily scans, it's a lot better for your stress levels. It's a lot easier for your mental health, and it actually makes you a more efficient planner. So instead of like every day going and saying, "Hey, what happened today?" Having a few critical things in mind. Like for me right now, it's hits on nuclear facilities and escalations that I'm monitoring. It's the infrastructure hits, because I know that has a lot of downstream stuff going on, and then I'm actively kind of scanning for is there a announced shortage in saline? Is there announced shortage in a couple of things? Instead of trying to figure out everything that's happened all day long, like one of the critical thresholds was, well, if gas hits 450, then set an alert, set searches, let yourself know. If you do it by triggers instead of by every single day pouring over every single news, then it makes it a lot more manageable, and it makes it a lot less all consuming. So this is my suggestion, just from me, and of course, I'm no expert. I'm just a girl trying to get along, like you guys. But for the COVID cautious community, the first thing that I would do is know your burn rate. Take an inventory. Think about from the time you get up from out of bed in the morning till the time you go to bed at night. What are the things you depend on? What do you use, and how much of them do you use? Because you can't really know where you are if you don't figure out like what your need is. You have to identify the need first. And so one of the things that I've been doing over the past couple of weeks is just every time I get up and I use something, I've kind of this kind of awareness about, okay, if I had to do without X, Y, or Z, if I had to do without my deodorant, well, would I be happy making a baking soda paste, or would I really be not happy? And if I'm really not happy with it, maybe I want to get like 6 months of deodorant somehow. If I'm okay with the baking soda paste, great, because I have baking soda around and that will work. So like that's the kind of stuff that we have to start thinking about, which sort of sucks on top of all the other things we already have to think about in our daily life and our COVIDing precautions, but it's just the way that it is right now. And so from the time you get up in the morning until the time you go to bed, pick a day or two to kind of just take an inventory of the things that you use, the things that you need, and how much of them you need. And then you can always take that daily quantity and multiply it by 30 for a month. Or you can take your monthly quantity and multiply it by 12 for a year. I think everyone should start with having, try to start with having 60 days, 90 days if you can. If you can't do 30, but like a week is not going to cut it for us right now. We have to kind of start laying by stores, or at least making a plan where, okay, my friend has eggs and she has more eggs than she can do with, because she has a bunch of chickens. And so she's bringing me her eggs. And so I have a bunch of access to medications and things that make it really easy. And so maybe I'm sharing some of my medical stuff with her, and she's sharing some of her eggs with me. Or maybe my kid gets their meat rabbits going, and we have some trade like that. Or maybe I don't have time and I need help with some of like just the kind of mundane errand task, because I'm doing X, Y, or Z that I can contribute. But my other friend has time to like hang out with my kids and help them with some things while I get some some other things done. Like those are the kind of systems and ways that we can, um, let off the pressure, I guess, in this kind of situation. So determine your burn rate. Masks. Masks are going to take a hit. Number one, that adjustable nose piece in your mask is made of aluminum. Okay. And that adjustable nose piece in your mask, the aluminum is about to go away and become more expensive or hard to find. And then there's also all the can never say it. The polypropylethylene pieces, the some of the melt, the melt blown stuff in your mask is plastic based. Okay, so you really need to have your mask stocked and through the end of the year if you can, and if it takes, I know that recently there have been like some mask blocks that are kind of winding down or disbanding or trying to like hand out their stuff. I know that people have brought me a bunch of masks that they're not using anymore, but try to find out, especially if you have, we all kind of have our favorites now that we fit tested and we know that work. Get your mask. Okay, that's a priority. Determine your burn rate, get your mask lined out because you're going to need them, whether it's for wildfires or whether it's for, just on your day to day. Like taking our mask away is something that would be really, really hard for us to deal with. So please get your mask stocked. Schedule any of your MRIs now. Get your medication stocked, 30-day supply, 60-day supply, 90-day supply, whatever you can. I know my insurance plan will let me do 90-day supplies on a lot of things, but it also does come with a triple copay. And so you kind of have to balance out that, but do what you can. And that also includes your over-the-counter medications, like I said, like ibuprofen or whatever it is that you kind of use to keep yourself going. Get those COVID boxes up to date now as much as possible. Of course, I say that and I tell you I'm not going to do my what's in your COVID box till April 10th. So maybe you want to bookmark the 10th. But we all kind of know in general what needs to be in that COVID box. And let's not be caught without stuff. And that includes rapid tests, rapid test made of plastic, reagents got a lot of a lot of dependency on that kind of market, and so getting your COVID box up to date as quickly as possible will be helpful. Monitoring the trigger points instead of doom, and only you know what those are for you. And then producing something that you can eat, growing something that you can eat, and then helping out each other and building those networks. And I would personally suggest that anybody within 3 or 4 hours of you is still fair game. It will be hard, not impossible, and we've done it, but it will be hard to help people that live across the country from you. Now, I have been helped by people who live all the way in Hawaii. Thank you, Sandy. But it will be easier if you can at least have people that are within a day's a reasonable day's drive. Really find those people, and maybe we don't. Maybe I'm not your favorite person, but I'm COVID cautious, and I am a good person. So let's try to kind of build those networks. And then now that brings us to talking about Plus Life. Okay. Because now you can probably kind of put these dots together and see that all of those of us who rely on Plus Life are about to hit some snags and some things that we need to deal with. So the first thing I wanted to start out with was the whole one negative Plus Life test analysis versus two negative tests. My family recently has gone to, so I have an older kiddo. He's 28. He doesn't live with me. And he doesn't COVID anymore, much to my chagrin. Of course, you guys know how well that sits with me, but I mean, I can't force the dude. He's a full-blown grown man. And so, but he does want to see us. He does want to see our family. And he's been willing to do various things. We've done quarantines and all of that kind of stuff, but with Plus Life, we have actually kind of gone to the system where he actually doesn't quarantine before he comes to stay at our house. But he does 2 Plus Life tests in a row the day that he stays with us, and then we test every 12 hours. And we've been doing this now for, I don't know, probably 8 months, 9 months maybe. And knock on wood, so far so good. But the reason why that we did this was because we ran some probabilities. Well, first of all, you have to be sure of whoever's doing the swab I wouldn't do this if you can't see somebody swabbing or they don't know how to do a nasal pharyngeal. My son actually validated a COVID assay, and so he actually can nasal pharyngeal herself. I mean, himself. But I know he's actually getting in there and getting a really, really good swab. And so only do that with people that you can watch them swab and make sure they're actually getting nose and throat and they're actually getting a good sample. And so I wanted to actually kind of look at these probability numbers and kind of show you the risk, the odds, for Plus Life actually picking up a test. And this is not symptomatic or asymptomatic. This is just, if the virus is present. So, thanks for Mike Hoger, who gives us all of these really nice COVID heat maps. And right now, this was March 23rd. It was estimated that 147 people had COVID. He actually breaks it down by state, and you can see in the really high states of Michigan and Mississippi, it was like 1 in 41 or 1 in 31. I decided to run my scenario very conservatively with the 1 in 29 people having COVID. So, to catch COVID, first of all, COVID has to be in your environment, right? And so there's a certain probability that you will, encounter a person with COVID. That's that 1 in 29 number here that I fed into. So I actually went even a little higher than what the highest places have projected right now, which Mike does a pretty decent job of kind of grabbing the data that we have. And so I was running the number here with 1 in 29 people, one person out of every 29 people having COVID. And then I went kind of, lower down to a 90% sensitivity rate. If you're using the nets, then their sensitivity rates are actually higher than this. But I said, okay, I'm going to go with a 90% sensitivity rate. And I am not going to say that there are any false positives. I'm going to say if there's an actual positive, it's actually a positive. And so, then we have a whole little theoretical formula here, which is statistically kind of above my head. But evidently, by taking these numbers and these probabilities, will you find it in your environment? How good is the test at detecting it? And if it finds something, is that actually it? And with one test, you come up with a 1 in 281% chance that you miss that COVID infection. And so, that's way less than 1%. That's, way, way not even a third of a percent. And that is just with one test. So, what if you run two tests in a row or two tests simultaneously? Now, these tests have to be on different samples. You can't take the same sample and split it because does not increase your probability of catching an error. But if you take a sample, two separate samples, good samples, and you run them, then you can do two tests, and that actually gives you a compounded reduction in margin of error. And so if you have a compound production, the probability that two independent negative tests would miss an infection is 1 in 2,800. Or again, a whole nother zero in front of that number. There is a very, very small probability if you actually get a good sample, if you have two tests in a row, and that's a substantial. The 1 in 2,800 versus the 1 in 281 is a pretty substantial risk reduction. So this is what we did months ago. And we said, okay, my son he does genetic modification. And before they insert into somebody's genome, they run 3 PCRs. And he said, Mom, I'll run 3 tests simultaneously before I come and hang out with you guys and take off masks. And I said, well, we've kind of run the numbers. And I said, I think I'm okay with this. I think I can live with this. We'll do 2. And so that's the model that we've gone to. I just thought it was sort of cool though that you can kind of quantify risk and you can see it is a really if you are getting a good sample, it is a really low risk if you're using these high quality tests. These high quality tests actually, thanks to M. Peng for his priority of interventions that he gave to us again over in his presentation, I think about a year and a half ago, when the number one thing you can do to protect yourself from any infectious disease is get it out of your environment. I can't catch COVID if I'm not around COVID. Uh, if I'm talking about masks or filters of ventilation, I'm talking about trying to dodge COVID. But the easiest and most effective and most important way to not be infected is to not be around the infection in the first place. And that's why testing is number one in the hierarchy. And that's why I never understood even back like we used to do all of our co-ops and test and mask and outside and all of that, and then the first thing that people wanted to do was drop the testing, and I kept going, but the testing stops you from being in that infectious environment. It just made intuitive sense to me that that's like the best protection is not to be around it. It's not to have a mask on and hope you don't have a leak and hope it fits you right, and hope you don't sweat and hope someone's not too close to you. It's to get the people away from you that actually have the virus. And so I just wanted to share that with you because it's been kind of on my mind, that I do feel really good about being able to count on things like PCRs or our Plus Life test or any of the NAT tests really have kind of a similar profile here. And Plus Life with the whole graph, it has even a better profile of, catching those kind of early positives with more loci on the genes. And so for people like us who, still are really, big COVID outliers and very cautious people, this has allowed us to be able to have my child's infusion nurse in the house, and unmask, or unmask with family or friends, by using this kind of risk analysis. I mean, does that mean we're running around, licking doorknobs or not wearing our pappers into really crowded situations or anything like that? No, it doesn't. But it just means that as we kind of learn more about the data, we can use the data to help protect us and help layer things according to our knowledge and our ability. So which makes Plus Life really, really important to me. It makes Plus Life very, very important to me and my family in our risk calculus. It makes us really, really, really rely on this to be able to cut down on virus in our environment. And so um, that's why I want everybody to know about it, and I want everybody to be able to access it and have high quality tests. Can you do this with a rat? Absolutely not. You cannot. But you can do it with a PCR or a Plus Life. Now, there was a rumor going around that they've abandoned the FDA approval process. People were saying, oh no, now it's never going to be FDA approved. That's not actually true. What happened was there was going to be a joint push for FDA approval. So Plus Life is the manufacturer and Altruron is the distributor. And the distributor and the manufacturer were going to make a joint push towards FDA approval. And they were in some pretty intense negotiations all of last year to figure out how to make that joint push. The FDA warning letter came out as part of that push, as part of that application process. And what happened was the distributor and the manufacturer broke up with respect to that endeavor. They decided they weren't doing it together. The manufacturer is still going to proceed with FDA approval. It has just delayed the process because the stuff that they were jointly working on, the manufacturer has decided to do on their own. So Plus Life in China has a US team that they have put together to be able to go after FDA approval. But because they're doing it together now instead of as a joint effort, they're kind of starting over in their process again. And so it will likely be several years before they get there. And now the whole Iran conflict throws a whole nother monkey wrench into that. But it's not like it's not happening at all. It's not like it's just all is for naught and no, they're not ever going after approval again. It's that it is just delayed again. So now let's talk about the bad news. The Plus Life supply chain vulnerability due to the Iran conflict, okay? So Plus Life depends on a number of things that are actually very vulnerable to Middle East supply chain disruption. Polymer supply is a part of it. Export logistics is a part of it. The cold chain enzymes are a part of it. And then in the docks themselves, the semiconductor components of those docks require helium to be produced. And so you can see here, this is like when production was normal and at 100%, and we were ready to go before the conflict. Then you can see how the different components ended up dropping and how we are about to move into a physical scarcity window for the components to manufacture Plus Life. And then we're going to move into a customer visible impact on being able to actually access or source Plus Life tests. And that's because the cartridge is plastic, the swab is plastic, the packaging is aluminum, the little full things on top of the bottles of the reagents are aluminum, the bottles are plastic. All of these things it's a confluence of all of these things that are going to be an issue. So I've been monitoring the situation as well. We've got polypropylene and polyethylene for testing and housing, and that's critically and actively deteriorating. We have uh, nitrocellulose supply membranes, polystyrene, all of these things. And again, I will make this available to you so you can see that we have high exposure to these things, a moderate to high risk for the nitrocellulose membrane supply, a high risk for the enzymes and biological reagents and components. The packing material is confirmed margin destruction. The NAP, the cracker stain, is already confirmed in compounding. So again, we're back at the issues that we have things already happening today that will affect the supply, even if the Iran conflict stops tomorrow. We are going to have issues with supply for our Plus Life tests. Anyway, that's about what I had to kind of go over today. Now I'm going to back up into the chat and I'm going to go through and answer your chat questions all the way from the top. I know you guys have kind of been chatting along on your own, and so I do apologize if I'm going to be a little bit late to the party, but I'll see if I can pick up anything that people don't have. Okay, so I'm coming down through here. Oh, Jessica's saying she's going to be on the forum to let people in. If you go ahead and you haven't joined yet and you're ready to join, please do that. And then Olia's saying that she has cleared the forum, the starter forum. Okay, there's some information here. Yes, to join the forum, remember what we ask you to do is to go ahead and send, a request, a photo of you with your Plus Life machine, or if you don't have one, a photo of you in your favorite mask saying, I want Plus Life, to the ModMin account on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, you can email that to us. And if the information is pinned at the top of our Facebook groups as well. You can email us at what's the new one? You can do coveting still at gmail.com.
It's written later in the comments, Kara.
Is it? I was like, I know I just made it.
Just to let you know.
Yeah. So that way it'll be faster. But you can email us if you don't want to do it through a Facebook message, and then we will let you in. And as soon as I find it in the comments, I'll say it. Okay, we have the technology, but yes, that's right. Would this protect at that rate without updates to it? Would we get it yearly? I think we're talking about the monoclonal at this point. The monoclonal probably will eventually have to be updated, but the ACE binding receptor molecules would not. So that's why I'm so excited about them. But the monoclonals, they usually last a couple of years before they have to be updated. For the ACE2 decoy, would people need to take it every few hours in perpetuity or more is needed? So right now, if the ACE2 decoy, if it were produced today, you would have to take it every 4 hours. But what they're trying to do is find some carrier molecules that will delay that and make it linger in your body longer. And so then you wouldn't have to do that. But that's been one of the impediments to its development, is how long it stays in the body. Is Invivid getting funded? Would be great to know where to send resources. Yes, actually, it is funded. That monoclonal it's almost ready to go. So that's not the one that needs the funding. The one that needs the funding is the ACE2 decoy. Let's see, post-exposure prophylaxis. Yeah. That's another one. That would be great, but as far as I know, there's not a US pipeline in development for that one yet. For the I don't know how you say it, Zocova. I did actually see some stuff come across there, but I don't know when we're going to have access to that in the United States. Yes, you can have a copy of the timelines of the preventative. I'll get that out to you. Um, the American Resiliency YouTube channel. Can we create a map that's private? Jessica and I were trying to work on that the other night. We kind of ran into some snacks. We weren't quite successful yet, but we would eventually like to do that. Absolutely. We kind of have like, I guess maybe a little bit of some of a skeleton of how we might be able to do that. But it is something that we hope to kind of circle back to so that we can have a, where are my coveting friends map. That would be great.
Yeah, we're actively working on it.
Yep. Um, yes, Kyle is right. Once they get used to profits and price points, a lot of times prices don't come back down, and that's not something that we're necessarily looking forward to right now. Um, I'm glad that, we can be helpful for a lot of people with some of this new data. And it is something that's, evolving very quickly and that we do need to kind of keep in touch on. I think I'm going to just start posting regular updates too, both on the forum and in forward motion when like critical events happen, like the water plant being hit today that escalates things, or if Yemen closes the other side of the strait, or the other strait. It's definitely something we all got to keep our eyes kind of on. Potatoes grow really well in food safe 5-gallon buckets. Yeah, right. Mine rotted. But I'm working on it. I actually had grow bags, is what I had with grommets in the bottom, and I only got some tiny little potatoes, and then I got my one of my bags grew some tiny little ones, and the other ones didn't really grow at all. But I'm gonna try this mounding method that I found online that's supposed to be easier. So we'll see how that goes. Um, Canned proteins are good, yes, and you can use the oil to cook with, yes. And cooking oil is something that's projected. Is a lot of it's heavily soybean dependent, and soybeans are heavily fertilizer dependent, and of course we have the whole fertilizer shortage. So that's the issue. If someone wants to buy potatoes, I'll buy the still. I thought about that the other day too because I want the still so that I can sterilize wounds with alcohol. Hello. But yes, you can make booze. Okay, working on the map. Um, yes, you can accidentally lose your meds sometimes, and you can get an emergency replacement from your insurance company, usually once, and usually if it's not a controlled substance. Then we talked a little bit about my testing protocols. Okay, and wastewater dating. Thank you guys for sharing information with each other. Thank you, Emily, for putting some of this info in here about the forum and how to get your plus life. Let's see here. I need to order test current order information in the forum. Yep. Um, and then I heard that if Plus Life Doc is older than a year or two, they don't provide accurate results. That's absolutely not true. If you're getting a read from your Virus Sucks app, your result is good on that read. As long as you have a control line, you will stop getting reads when your doc stops working. Is the Plus Life vulnerability chart from them? It is not. It is from the scenarios that I run, and the analysis of the actual components of Plus Life. Plus Life itself has not notified Altron of any shortages yet, but Altron is anticipating shortages because they are already seeing shortages in Europe, like I said, of nitrile gloves and other components. They actually commented that some of the other products they source from China have already become scarce, not available, or double or triple in price. And so they are anticipating either pricing hikes or shortages. But as of now, there has been no notification about Plus Life. They did tell me it is a just-in-time manufacturing chain. So they do actually make the batches as they're requested by Alteron. They don't have a bunch of the batches sitting in the warehouse, but of course they do have to have some stock of the raw materials to make the batches. And they didn't know how much the stuff that they had. So unfortunately, we don't really know how much stock is there at the Plus Life manufacturing facility. So we don't really know when the shortages will actually start hitting, which is why it's really important that we stay in really good contact with the powers that be at Alteron, because they're going to be the first ones to know. Um, Thank you for organizing people to distribute. We appreciate that. Yes, vet tests work with the original docs. Thank you, James, for saying that. If you're in New Zealand, you can buy in-person human tests. That's true. There used to be some extra paperwork that you had to do, though. Somebody in New Zealand will have to speak to that. I don't know if you still have to do that paperwork or not, but there was an extra paperwork step in New Zealand to get the human test for a little while. No price gouging. That's right. We don't do that to each other. We're a family and a community. We're not profiteers off of each other. Um, for those of you who can't access Plus Life, would you say Metrics is a viable alternative? It is the only alternative right now. I personally am not a fan of Metrics. They have a lot, way too many invalids for me, or even false positives, but they are definitely better than the alternative, which is pretty much nothing unless you can set up a CFID or a lamp setup. So some of us may have to, but they are going to have the same issue that Plus Life does with their components. They are not immune. Any semiconductor pieces in the actual reader are still going to be supply chain vulnerable. Any of the plastic parts are still going to be supply chain vulnerable. These are things we don't really make naphtha in the US. That's the problem. And so that's why we are going to feel these impacts, is that we're not set up for these things. And so Metrics is not going to be immune. And Metrics already has trouble keeping up with their supply and demand. I see them, they sell it all the time. And so I wouldn't count on them as a real super reliable backup source. But yes, you can use them as backup if that's the only alternative. It's risky to pass information outside the forum into private channels because the details change all the time. Yes, that's true. You give someone something outside the forum and they can't monitor it in the forum, and then it becomes outdated information and it's harder to get that. And so unless you want to continually be updating the people that you're supplying the information to, that's an issue. And then that looks like it's it. So we've kind of come through the docs. The questions, not the docs, the chat. Um, is if there's anything else that anybody needs to know, I'm all ears. But I do
I,
appreciate. Go ahead.
Kara, did you see the Gmail address is still coveting and beyond at gmail.com?
Thank you.
I'm
You would
sorry.
think I would remember
Sorry,
what
I
I create.
apologize. I was
No, thank you. Yes,
still
still coveting and beyond at gmail.com.
sorry.
That's the one that more people can access, so you're not waiting on me to let you in. Still coveting and beyond at gmail.com. Thank you guys. So great to see you. I am very excited to kind of get back into the saddle, and let's stick together through all this stuff that's happening. It's a lot.